Up in the big game, Hunter, and welcome to the Tuesday episode of Career Coach Office Hours. On Tuesdays, I field questions I received during the week about job search. You can put other questions into chat related to hiring more effectively, managing and leading, resolving different workplace issues, a whole host of different things. Friday's show, which is at 9 a.m., deals with something different. And what we try to do is answer questions. The focus becomes on the questions that I received about hiring, managing, leading, workplace stuff. But in chat, I also field questions related to job search. Now, if you have a question for me, you can email in advance of the show at thebiggamehunter@gmail.com. And the subject line, please put the phrase office hours. Because it just helps me organize my mail well so I can see your message. And Marco, thank you. I appreciate love this. So if you have a question, don't hesitate to put it into chat, okay? Now, I have a number of questions and I have a hard break at 12:30 today because I have a session scheduled right behind this. So let me just dive right in. And as people join, I'll field questions if they have them. So question number one, if you work in HR or involved in hiring, the average time spent looking at someone's resume is 6 seconds. So what's something that really stands out to you and helps you separate individuals from the herd? Well, I worked in search for a long time, like 40 years, and filled lots of positions. We quantified, I reviewed over 750,000 resumes, but I know it was a lot more than that. And what I'll say is the first thing that you're able to do is see very quickly that someone doesn't fit. You're looking for particular terms that aren't there. If you're not sure, you use the find feature in Word to search for those terms. And if they're not there, you can just hit delete, because what's the point? You may, and again, I was a third-party recruiter, you may recognize something in the person's background that might fit for something else, and they don't fit for this job. Most of the resumes I received were not a fit for anything I was working for. They were basically spam. So the easiest thing is the rule out. The rule in is very simple. I'm seeing things that relate to what my client was looking for. And thus, in those cases, you get in touch with that person or send them a message. Or if you're not sure, I would send an email to clarify a point. Again, this is not the era of text. I stopped working in search like 5 years ago. So when all is said and done, I'm looking to rule people out first because that's always easy. And then in for this job, in for another job. And I'm recognizing something there, or I'm not seeing something there that makes me make a decision one way or the other. Second question is, how can I respond to questions I don't understand during an interview? I love this one. And the idea is you want to buy some time. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to ask them to rephrase the question. Could you rephrase that question a little bit differently? That becomes an easy way to do it. Another way is with you doing more of the talking and say, I just want to make sure I understand your question correctly. Are you asking me for fill in the blank or something else? And thus, what you're able to do is get them to clarify in that way. So when all is said and done, clarification allows you to buy a little bit of time. Either way, they're going to talk a little bit more. And sometimes you get someone who's really shrewd on the first question and say, no, do your best. And that puts it back at you to clarify a point or to give them the answer. No matter what, over talk if that happens. By that I mean explain what your thinking is so that they understand how you came to that answer so that you're not feeling like a dope. The biggest thing is not to project insecurity. Professionalism requires you take the bull by the horns and ask questions. Like in the first example, could you clarify your question a little bit, or could you rephrase the question a little bit? Uh, there's a couple of possible ways I could go. I want to give you what you want. It all works. Just ask them, and that buys you some time to come up with the answer. How long are you supposed to wait after a job interview to send a follow-up email? The answer is you should ask that at the interview. Among your final questions to ask is, when do you think I might hear back after the interview, after today? Well, and then there's a couple of ways that they can respond. Number one is they can say to you, we'll respond somewhere when hell freezes over. Or the more professional way to say is, we have a lot more people to talk to, and we'll be back when we're done with the first round. Basically, what they're saying is, don't call us, we'll call you. Another way is, you should hear by early part of next week, which basically is, they have some sort of a commitment as to when, but nothing to hang your hat on. A third way they might respond is to say, you might hear early part of next week about scheduling you back to meet so-and-so. More interest on their part, right? And then whatever they say, let's say they say early part of next week, and we stick with that as an example. So if I haven't heard from you by Wednesday, Thursday, is it okay if I follow up? You do that in the interview so there's no guesswork. Because remember, on their side, they can always say, sure, or wait. Wait basically says, not so fast. We're not all that thrilled with you. So everything they respond to your question with is a signal of interest or disinterest. And thus, if you haven't heard from them in 2 weeks, you can pretty well kiss this thing off because they're not so excited. If they were excited, they get back to you much sooner than that. But I would message them, let's say you do the interview on Thursday. If you didn't ask this question, which is, I don't know why you wouldn't, but if you haven't heard from them by Wednesday, I'd follow up with an email. Don't sit back waiting for the phone to ring like a date on Thursday night. What you do is you always take the bull by the horns and ask the question and reach out to them. What's the best approach to the salary negotiation process? God, what an awful question. Salary negotiation doesn't begin after you get the offer. Salary negotiation begins during the interview. And once you realize that when they're asking you about desired compensation, or you're in states where it's still legal or locales where it's still legal, once they're asking you about how much you're earning and how much you're looking for, they're negotiating. You don't think it's a negotiation, but they're negotiating. Remember, they have the ability to follow up and say, would you be a little bit flexible? They're negotiating, right? So everything during the interview is the negotiation. And thus, when they get to the offer phase, to them, they're taking your information and acting from it. And if they're trying to lowball you, it's because they haven't necessarily fallen in love. You haven't hit all the talking points, or they're trying to get you on the cheap. You need to be prepared for offers by recognizing your answers to previous questions during interviews and noticing what their response was. By noticing their response, you can tell whether or not they're interested at those prices. If they're coming in for less, they're taking a shot. There's no love there. And I'm not going to go into negotiation after the offer because there's a million ways to negotiate. You can go to my YouTube channel, which is JobSearchTV.com, and get to the playlist that talks about salary negotiation videos. It might be easier actually to find it at my website, thebiggamehunter.us, and then use the category of salary negotiation videos to pull those up and start watching. You'll see I have a few hundred there about salary negotiation. I can't cover a few hundred videos in a limited time on the show. Next question. What does the phrase, we are at an absolute point in the negotiation mean? If you think of absolute in math, absolute is, the limit. This is it. This is the specific. And it's the same thing in the negotiation. An absolute point in the negotiation is we're maxed out. We're done. If you want to talk, keep flapping your gums. We're not going $1 above this. We're not changing anything in our offer in order to up the money. We're at the point where we're saying to you, you have two choices: leave it or take it. Nothing more. So basically what they're saying is, we've had enough of this game. You've got to choose. Last question for today. My goodness, I'm plowing through this stuff today. Should I switch companies to bump my salary? Let me just check something. There we go. Should I switch companies in order to get my salary, to bump my salary? Now, do you like your job? Yes, no. That's easy. Like the work that you do? Yes, no. That's easy. Do you like the people you work with? Yes, no. That's easy. Think of it from the standpoint of what you want to accomplish. If it's purely about money, you can go to your management and say, look, I think I'm underpaid by market standards. When I've gone online, you've been looking online? Yeah, I've been looking online, just like you do. When I've been looking online, what I'm seeing is people with my level of experience in this geographic area earn such and such. And I'm about $10,000 below that number. So I'd really appreciate it if you increased my salary between cycles. And this could be our secret if that's your preference. The idea is to basically say, I've been looking online, and watch the look on their face when you acknowledge that. And I'm seeing I'm underpaid to the tune of about whatever it is. And I'd really appreciate it if you increased my salary now, so that in this way, I don't have to think about doing anything else. Now, it's implied in that you'll look for another job unless they increase the money. And if they say, go ahead, be our guest, well, you have a message in that. If they say, we'll be back to you in a week, I don't know if I can do this, basically what they're saying to you is they're a little bit nervous and they want to buy some time. Get your resume dusted off, start working on getting interviews, because they may only be allowed to increase the offer at the point that you resign and they make you a counter offer. That's certainly possible. But from the standpoint of the variables of all those other things I mentioned earlier related to the work, your coworkers, your insurance coverages, etc., that make the decision more complicated than should I switch companies to increase my salary. I'm Jeff Altman. I hope you found this helpful. If you did and you're watching on YouTube, click the like button, share it, let someone else know it was worthwhile. I'll also say that there's a lot more on my website, thebiggamehunter.us. I've got thousands of posts there, like almost 12,000 in the blog that you can watch, listen to, or read to help you find work more quickly. Also, you can go to Amazon and order my books. The Ultimate Job Interview Framework will teach you how to interview far better than you do now. And then there's the right answers to tough interview questions. They are two separate books. They complement one another very well. I have others that are more guides than anything. They're available for Kindle. I've written 9 that are still published. I've pulled several off the market because they're out of date. But again, if you go to Amazon and look for the Ultimate Job Interview Framework or the right answers to tough interview questions, both will help you a lot. I also have a class on Udemy on the Ultimate Job Interview Framework. You can order that class very inexpensively and will help you interview very, very much. Lastly, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/IN/the Big Game Hunter. Mention that you saw this because I like knowing I'm helping people and one's connected Message that you're interested in job search, hiring, management, and leadership, workplace issues, forms of coaching related to the workplace. Let me know. I like knowing I'm helping some folks, and I hope you have a terrific day. And most importantly, be great. Take care.